There is a card taped inside my old toolbox from my 19 years at a Toyota dealership, and on it are 12 things no service advisor is ever going to say out loud at the counter. Most of what keeps a Toyota or a Honda running past 300,000 miles was never in the owner's manual, and half of what the manual does tell you is padded to sell you parts before they're actually worn out. So why does almost every owner find this out only after they've already paid for the mistake? I remember the customer who changed how I do this job for good. She was about 70. She came into my old dealership with a Camry that had 212,000 miles on it. And she was sitting in the waiting room crying because the advisor had just told her the timing belt, the water pump, and the transmission all needed to come out $6,000 out the door on a car worth maybe $4,000. I pulled the technician who wrote that estimate into the back room and I asked him one question. Did you actually look at the belt? Or did you just go off the mileage sticker on the windshield? He didn't answer me. He just looked at his shoes. I walked back out, sat down next to that woman, popped her hood myself, and checked the belt with my own two hands. It had maybe another 30,000 miles left on it, easy. I sent her home with an oil change and a $100 bill instead of a $6,000 one, and she hugged me in the parking lot like I'd saved her life. In a way, I had. That's the day I knew something was wrong with how this whole business runs. My name is Walt Kessler. I'm the third generation in my family to make a living with my hands inside a Japanese engine bay. My grandfather worked on the first Toyotas that ever came off a boat into this country. My father spent 30 years doing the same. I spent 19 years behind a dealership service counter before I walked out and opened my own two-bay shop. And I have not missed that counter for one single day. What I watched happen for almost 2 decades was good, honest cars getting condemned by a chart on a wall instead of an actual set of eyes looking at the actual part. A mileage number would hit a certain point, and a service writer with a quota would read off a list, and most customers, especially the ones who trusted the dealership the way you trust a doctor, just nodded and paid. I am going to hand you 12 things from that card in my old toolbox. The things we knew and rarely said. The things that can save you thousands of dollars and years of driving a car you were told to give up on too soon. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. So let's start with the first hack, because it's the one that got me hooked on this job as a teenager working in my dad's shop. If you own a Toyota, Lexus, or Honda, built before about 1996, before the newer computer standard took over, there is a trick called the paperclip trick. You find the diagnostic port under the dash, you take a straightened paperclip, and on most of these older Toyotas, you bridge 2 specific terminals, TE1 and E1. On the older Hondas, it's a similar jump on a different connector. Turn the key to on, don't start the engine, and the check engine light on your dash starts blinking in a pattern. Long blinks are 10s, short blinks are 1s. Count them, and you have your trouble code, for free, with a 2-cent piece of metal. No scanner, no shop visit. My father taught me that trick when I was 14 years old, standing in a gravel driveway with a flashlight in my mouth and grease up to my elbows, watching that little light blink out a language only the two of us seemed to know. He'd count the flashes out loud, long ones first, then short ones, and write the number down on the back of a receipt like it was nothing. It felt like magic to me then. It's not magic. It's just a car telling you exactly what's wrong with it, in the cheapest way it knows how, if you're patient enough to sit still and count. Here's what most people get wrong about all of this, and it's the root of nearly everything else on this list. A repair shop, dealership, or independent gets paid the same flat rate, whether a job takes them 20 minutes or 2 hours. That flat rate book was built around a mileage chart, not around your specific car. So the fastest, most profitable move for a shop is to read the mileage off your dash and hand you the chart's answer. Looking at the actual part, testing the actual part, that takes time nobody's paying for. Think about the difference. The chart method costs you thousands of dollars and takes the shop maybe 2 minutes to read off a screen. The real method costs you nothing but 5 minutes of somebody actually looking, and it usually means the shop makes less money that day, not more. That's exactly why it doesn't happen very often, and it's exactly why I don't run my own shop that way. The industry solution is the chart. The real solution is 5 minutes with your own eyes. That's the whole secret. And once you understand that one fact, every single hack on this list is going to make sense to you. Which brings me to the second hack. Before you believe any mileage-based estimate, walk out to your driver's door, open it, and look at the sticker on the door jamb. That sticker has your exact build date, not your model year, your actual month and year of production. Part specs quietly change mid-model year on these cars all the time. And while you're standing there, if it's a timing belt job being discussed, ask to see the actual belt before you approve replacement. A belt that's cracking or glazed looks different from a belt that's simply old on the calendar. I've turned away hundreds of timing belt jobs over the years because the belt still had life in it. That door jamb sticker matters more than people realize. Because two cars with the same model year can roll off the line 8 or 9 months apart, with different suppliers, different part revisions, sometimes even different recommended intervals. A shop working off the model year alone is guessing. A shop working off your actual build date is giving you a real answer. Third hack, and this one costs people fortunes without them ever knowing why. Japanese automakers use a long life coolant, usually red or pink, sometimes called Toyota Super Long Life or Honda Type 2. It's built to last up to 10 years. If a quick lube tops off your radiator with the cheap green universal stuff, the two chemistries don't play nice together. They can react and turn into a sludge that clogs your radiator from the inside, quietly, over months. Always ask what color and what brand of coolant is going into your car, every single time. I had a Lexus come into my shop 2 summers ago with a radiator so clogged with that reaction sludge that the customer was quoted $2,200 for a full cooling system replacement somewhere else. We flushed it properly with the correct long life coolant, charged him $180, and that car is still on the road today. Fourth hack, the $15 part that saves engines. If you're burning oil and a shop tells you it needs a full engine rebuild, ask them to check the PCV valve first. It's a small valve, usually under $20, and when it sticks, it can mimic every symptom of a tired, worn-out engine, oil consumption, rough idle, blue smoke. I've seen $4,000 rebuild quotes solved by a $15 part and 10 minutes of labor. A man came into my shop last year with a Highlander, already resigned to buying a different car, because another shop told him the engine was tired and burning oil for good. I asked him to give me a week before he made any big decisions. I pulled the PCV valve, held it up to the light, and it was stuck solid, gummed up with years of sludge. $15 and 10 minutes later, that car stopped burning oil entirely. He drove it another 4 years after that. Fifth hack. If a shop plugs in a cheap generic code reader and tells you nothing's wrong, ask if they have the manufacturer-specific software, TechStream for Toyota, HDS for Honda. Generic readers only see a fraction of what these cars are actually reporting. The factory software sees transmission data, hybrid battery cell data, things a $15 reader was never built to find. Sixth hack. If your battery ever gets disconnected, for a repair, for a dead battery, for anything, these cars often need what's called an idle relearn. The computer forgets its baseline, and the engine can idle rough or even stall at stoplights for a few days until it relearns on its own, or until you do a quick procedure. Usually just idling the car in park for about 10 minutes, that speeds it up. People pay for a whole diagnostic visit, sometimes over $100, just to have someone plug in a scanner, over a rough idle that was never actually broken to begin with. It's the car relearning its own habits, the same way you'd feel a little off for a day or two after moving into a new house. Give it a chance to settle back in before you assume the worst. Seventh hack. When you need parts, look for the brand name on the box before you buy. Denso, NGK, Aisin, Koyo. These aren't off-brand parts. These are literally the same companies that build the original part for the factory, sold to you directly instead of through a dealership markup. Same part, sometimes half the price, and it's one of the easiest hacks on this whole list to actually use, because most parts stores will sell these brands straight over the counter to anybody who walks in. A set of dealer-branded spark plugs for a V6 Camry might run you close to $90. The exact same plug, made by Denso in the exact same factory, sitting on a parts store shelf under the Denso name instead, often runs closer to $40. Nobody's cutting a corner. You're just paying for a box with a different logo printed on it. Eighth hack, and this one matters most if you live anywhere that salts the roads in winter. Japanese cars earn their reputation for lasting forever, but the engines usually outlive the frame underneath them if nobody protects it. An oil-based undercoating, applied once a year, maybe $150, can add a decade of life to the parts you can't see. The frame, the brake lines, the fuel lines. My father did this every single fall on every car in our family, without exception. I've had customers bring me 2 identical trucks, same year, same engine. One from a family that undercoated every autumn, and one that never had it done a single time. The engine in both trucks ran fine. The frame on the neglected one was so far gone by year 14 that the truck got scrapped, not because the motor failed, but because the frame underneath it wasn't safe to drive on anymore. Ninth hack, and it costs nothing. Go to the NHTSA website, type in your VIN, and it will show you every open recall and every published technical service bulletin for your exact car, for free. Dealerships perform recall work at no charge because the manufacturer pays for it, but most owners never even know one exists until something breaks, or until they get a letter in the mail years after the fact, if they ever get one at all. I've had customers drive in for an oil change and walk out having fixed a fuel pump recall they never even knew was sitting open on their car, one that would have cost them $400 out of pocket anywhere else. 4 minutes on that website is worth more than most people realize. 10th hack. If you ever own one of these cars from new, the timing of your very first oil change matters more than people think. The factory fill sometimes contains tiny metal particles from the break-in process, and getting that first change done a little earlier than the standard interval clears that debris out before it can circulate for years. 11th hack, and this one can save your engine outright. Before anyone tells you it's safe to stretch out a timing belt replacement, find out if your specific engine is what's called an interference design. On an interference engine, if that belt breaks while you're driving, the pistons and valves collide, and you're looking at a destroyed engine, not a tow truck and a new belt. On a non-interference engine, a snapped belt just leaves you stranded, nothing more. Same symptom, completely different stakes. And it takes one search of your engine code to know which one you have. I've had 2 cars towed into my shop on the same week, both with a snapped timing belt. Both owners equally surprised. One drove away 3 days later with a new belt and a bill under $400. The other one needed a whole new engine, because his happened to be the interference type. And that difference alone turned a bad Tuesday into a $5,000 Tuesday. 12th hack, the one almost nobody checks. Most scan tools can show you something called fuel trims, a number showing how much your computer is adjusting fuel delivery to keep the engine running right. If that number drifts high before your check engine light ever comes on, it's often an early sign of a small vacuum leak or a tired oxygen sensor. The kind of thing you can fix for pennies on the dollar if you catch it before it turns into a real problem. A cracked vacuum hose might cost you $8.20 if you catch it early from a fuel trim number. Ignore it for 2 years, and it can drag your gas mileage down, foul your spark plugs, and eventually take an oxygen sensor down with it, turning an $8 fix into a $400 one. That's the list. 12 things, taped inside a toolbox, that never once got mentioned across a service counter in 19 years. Here's the bigger picture, and I think about this every single day. I'm under a hood. The real cost was never the repair bill. The real cost is the gap between what a shop knows and what an owner is told. And that gap is where every bit of the distrust in this whole industry comes from. My grandfather used to say, "The car never lies to you, only the invoice does." And I've never heard a truer sentence about this job. A car will show you exactly what's wrong with it if you know where to look. It's the paperwork that gets creative. I think about that woman with the Camry more than almost any other customer I've had. She didn't need a new transmission. She needed somebody willing to spend 5 minutes looking instead of 30 seconds reading a screen. Multiply her by every service counter in this country, every single day, and you start to understand how much of what people think is wrong with their car was never wrong with the car at all. So here's what I want you to do tonight. Not next week, tonight. Walk out to your car, open the driver's door, and read the sticker on the jam. Then go to NHTSA.gov, type in your VIN, and see what comes up. It takes 4 minutes and it costs nothing. And most of you are going to be surprised by what you find. Tell me in the comments what your car's mileage is right now, and whether anybody ever tried to sell you a repair that turned out to be nothing. I read every one of them. Next time I'm going to show you exactly what's really being checked and what's really being skipped in that so-called free multi-point inspection. Every dealership hands you with a check mark next to 22 things in about 6 minutes flat. Until then, keep your eyes on the part, not the chart. And remember, the men who built these engines wanted them to last generations. It's worth learning how to let them. My grandfather never got to see how far these cars would go. My father is still amazed by it every time a customer's odometer rolls past 300,000 miles. And I intend to keep doing this work the same honest way they taught me. One belt, one sensor, one sticker on one door jamb at a time. for as long as people are willing to listen.